I'd like to open the meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District's Board of Education for January 19, 2016. Dr. Cash, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand. Ready, begin.
Buenas noches. Si algún miembro del público llegara a necesitar los aparatos para interpretación simultánea en español, están disponibles por esas puertas dobles. Muchas gracias.
And headsets for the hearing impaired are available, and if you need any, please indicate that you do. Do we have any board comments or correspondence?
Nope.
No. And we have no announcement of closed session action. Do we have any public comments on non-agenda matters within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education? No? And so we'll go on to conference agenda, which is the first one is presentation from Leadership Associates regarding superintendent search services.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We have Mike Escalante and David Verdugo from Leadership Associates. They're here to present their firm.
Thank you very much. Thank you. With the permission? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity of being here.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
You know where to find me.
I do.
Thank you. Pleasure. Doctor?
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to come and speak to you this cold and wet afternoon and so forth. David and I left a little south of here and drove through the rain, but it was absolutely beautiful, and we all know we need some rain. I had a fun time coming a little bit earlier and saw some of my friends that are here, David being one of them, but I'm actually doing some coaching with Ben Dradi, and I'm actually, Helen Rodriguez worked with me over in Fullerton High School District, has been a good friend for many years, and then Jackie Mora, who recently came to the district office, worked with me in Glendale. So David gets all the good ones. He knows how to recruit that network better than anybody. But thank you for the invitation as you kind of move through this incredibly important part of the responsibilities you have as board members. My name is Mike Escalante, and I'm a former superintendent of both Fullerton and Glendale. And almost had David, missed him by a half an hour to work with me in Fullerton. And currently work as a professor at the University of Southern California, as well as doing a lot of consulting work. And this is one of the pieces of my consulting work that I enjoy more so than anything else that I do. The opportunity of helping boards facilitate that process of selecting a new superintendent. So I'd like to do is let me also, before I get started, let me introduce my partner, David Verdugo, who has just come on board with us.
Thank you, Michael. Dr. Paz, board members, thank you for the opportunity to be here and address you this evening. Again, David Verdugo, an associate with Leadership Associates, recently retired superintendent of schools from Paramount Unified School District in Los Angeles County, a school district of about 17,000 students. Prior to that, deputy superintendent of schools in Placentia Yorba Linda in Orange County, a school district of about 27,000 students. 43 years of service in the field of education, all here in in Southern California, I should say. I'm currently the executive director of CALSA, the California Association of Latino Superintendents. Prior to that, the leadership superintendent's director for ALAS, the national Latino organization out of Washington, D.C. And of course, as Michael has mentioned, our experiences span many years and many positions. But again, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, David. Leadership Associates was established in 1996 by a group of very prestigious, well-known superintendents, really with the mission of helping boards facilitate the process of selecting a new superintendent. And one of the things we pride ourselves on is having an extensive network to recruit from, as well as using best practices for that process. We've done to date approximately 325 searches as a firm. I myself have done about 40 over the period of the last 5.5 years. And as an organization, we do about 50% of all the searches in the state as an organization. There are 12 partners, and we're geographically spread throughout the state in order to be able to reach out to the best candidates and recruit them, but also vet them, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. As an organization, even though David and I are the only ones here, we're really an organization of 12 superintendents. So whenever we move through a process, even though our other partners will not be here, they're also actively involved in the process, because once we develop a profile, we'll ask them to do is help recruit. And then once we start looking at candidates that have actually applied, we'll ask them to help us vet those candidates, because you want to know everything you can about those potential candidates. So there are 12 partners, and partners really are, all of them are involved at different levels doing a lot of different things, even though they're all retired, or as I like to say, recuperating superintendents. They're all involved in state organizations. They're involved in organizations such as CALSA, AASA, AXA, and so forth. We've been incredibly successful in attracting the best and the brightest as far as potential superintendents to work for our organization. We are incredibly selective in the process of the candidates that we will bring to you. We will all be directly involved in that process. One of the other things that we provide the process is you won't have to ask Sandra to do a whole lot of work in the process, because we have a secretary in an office, and we'll provide all the documents and the pieces of information that are needed as we move along through the process. We recruit the best and the brightest. One of the things that I think you also should understand about our service is our price that we provided for you is all-inclusive. We don't charge you for travel. We don't charge you for copying documents. We don't charge you for clerical support in the process. It's one price for the whole thing. The other piece of it is we also do something that we sort of stepped up over the last several years, is that we'll kind of guarantee that candidate will be successful for a couple years for you, because we feel like we're in the process, too, of supporting them to make sure that they're successful here in Santa Barbara. Search is really our core mission as an organization. And we do an exceptional job of finding the best candidates. Some people like to accuse organizations such as ourselves as having a stable of candidates that we bring from one search to another. That really is not the case, because we're vested in the process and want to make sure whoever comes is going to be the best and brightest and going to be successful in the process. We're a little bit different than some of the other organizations that you'll talk to tonight, is we are the owners of the firm. We have a vested interest in the success of your new superintendent. I've been doing searches for 5.5 years, and I can tell you not one of the approximately 40 superintendents that I've had a chance to work with have been asked to leave. In fact, there's only one of them that really has left, and he was actually promoted in another district nearby, recruited by a board who was trying to get him over into their district. So with that, let me turn it over to David and let me have him kind of walk you through the process so you can have a good understanding.
Thank you, Michael. Ladies and gentlemen, if I'm not mistaken, I think you have this in front of you as well. What I wanted to do, and understanding that we have a limited time, I wanted to address what I've often called the essential phases. And it is the one page that has the bubbles, if you will, on the far left that are blue in color. And we feel that this is really a very, very good way to visualize our process and the ownership as well as the service that we provide to you. Beginning with phase 1, which is the initial meeting, review the search process, discuss those key characteristics desired in your new superintendent. That's essential. The district's strengths, but also the district's challenges as well, are important to understand. The community staff input process, again, I'll overuse that word, is essential, making sure that we not only hear from the governing board, but also the stakeholders that rely upon you on those decisions that you make. An online survey that's available in several languages, and then we finalize a timeline. We meet with you to discuss what might be comfortable for you with respect to your personal and business calendars. Phase 2, meeting with individual groups per the board's request. We believe it's important for you to tell us who to speak to, which stakeholders, what characteristics are desired in that new superintendent, professional and personal, as a matter of fact. Again, district strengths, challenges, we like to think of them as actually opportunities instead of challenges. Phase 3, develop a position description using the input received, or in other words, a profile of this community and also a profile of this school district as well. We believe they go hand in hand. That description of the district and the community, key search dates, board reviews and approves the draft. We pass this information by you, by Sandra. Sandra is very often going to be our liaison to the Board of Education. And of course, anytime you would have direct questions of us, you can certainly ask us directly via email or phone call. We post on the Leadership Associates websites, the district websites, and then we provide that to candidates. Going on to phase 4, we advertise also in many of the trade publications. EdCal, for example, you're very familiar with that. EdJoin, if you prefer and if you'd like, we do that with AASA as well, the American Association of Superintendents. I'm a former governing board member of AASA, and so that type of outreach and connection is very easily done. Phase 5, meet with the board to review all applicants. Keyword there, each and every applicant you have the opportunity to see, to look at, to ask questions about. We discuss, and determination of those top candidates is a mutual conversation that takes place with us. The board determines the finalists to be interviewed. After a vetting process, of course. We review the interview process and we help prepare those interview questions. What are some of those key questions? What is it that you most desire to find out, to discuss, and to vet, if you will, amongst those candidates accordingly? And then phase 6, board conducts interviews with the assistance from Leadership Associates. Dr. Escalante and myself would be available with you on that date chosen, and we would then along with you, of course, it's you, not us, but rather the board selects that finalist. The consultants inform all of the candidates of the outcome. You are probably very familiar with this process, but nevertheless, we keep a arm's length out to those candidates and making sure that we communicate with them professionally and personally. And then phase 7 is when and after the board has selected an individual, the board visits the finalist district prior to official contract offer, work with the board and finalist as needed to develop the final parameters that are required for a contract, and of course we would help prepare a press release as well. The board takes public action at a regularly scheduled board meeting. This has to be done at a regular board meeting, as you know, and you employ that new superintendent. We will continue to provide and review the board community input with the new superintendent. We want to be a bridge of contact, assistance, and support through the board and with that new individual. And Leadership Associates will provide additional follow-up services as desired. I certainly have helped any number of superintendents in their first position write out and, if you will, be strategic with their 90-day plan, for example. So those types of services are certainly available with Leadership Associates as well. But we really do consider this search process as really being quite critical in those phases that I just mentioned, are those key elements. Dr. Escalante?
I know you want to have a chance to ask some questions, and we probably haven't answered all of them, but I would say to you, this is your search. You know, our job is to facilitate the process. As part of the process, there's always a question, do you get to see all the applications? Yes, you get to see all of the applications that are part of the process. We will look at, after we have done a community scan, we will make recommendations of maybe 4 to 6 that best match that particular set of criteria that you have developed. And then you decide whether you want to see all of them, you want to see part of them, and maybe even you want to go back into the pool and say, hey, you know what, there's somebody else that should be part of that process. Process takes approximately 3 months. It's kind of a good timeline. We'd like to think that we will offer you concierge service. When you're of need, that's our job. You'll have our phone numbers, you'll have our email, and it won't be a problem if you have a question along the way, because that's our job to facilitate the process. We do what's referred to as a confidential process. We've learned over a period of years that we get the best candidates in the pool, particularly sitting superintendents, by offering a confidential process. Not everybody wants to go through the process because only one person is going to get the job at the end of the day. We know California. We do wide recruitment, and probably more importantly than anything is we do in-depth reference checking, so that what you see and what you think you're getting is what you think you want. So with that, we're open for any questions. I don't know, did we go over our 20? About close?
No, you're good.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Perez. Paz?
Board?
Dr. Paz?
I'd like to ask one question on your last comment there about your confidential process.
Yeah.
Can you give me the pros and cons of confidential versus almost confidential versus no confidentiality whatsoever?
You know, there have been rare occasions that we have compromised the confidential process, and we would work with the board if they thought there was a need to expand the process. We've always believed that it's the board members' elected responsibility to make this final decision, and if you get the best and the brightest as a result, because you'll end up, if you don't make it a confidential search, you'll end up with far more assistant superintendents in the mix than you will with superintendents, because superintendents don't want to be exposed to the fact that they're out there looking for another job someplace else and then have to go back to their district. So
How do you overcome the public thinking that, hey, it's behind closed doors, we're not involved?
I didn't quite understand. I'm
The
sorry.
community might take the approach,
Yeah.
we want to know what's going on. We want a chance to give our comments or do our own research.
Well, as part of the process, we will be out there meeting with your community and taking input from them in a very organized and systematic way. So that's not a problem of getting input.
No, but have you ever had any community complaints after the board comes out and says, we are going to hire X, and then the community says, we don't like X?
Well, let me give you an example. I was involved in the search in Oakland, and if you know Oakland, that's a community where everybody participates as part of the process. So we went through the process and told all the candidates that it was confidential up until the time that we met with the board. And then they would have to make a decision of whether they wanted people to know that they were part of the process. We had 5 candidates, and 4 out of the 5 candidates said, if you open this up and it's no longer confidential, we're out. So the board made the decision that they said, well, you know what? There's some good candidates in that pool. We'd rather keep them and deal with whatever the outcome of it is. So you get to make that decision.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I may add just a comment about the fact that,
To the
You need to go to the
microphone.
mic.
I apologize. I was just simply going to add that about 90% of the time, there's a surprise that some of the stakeholders are in unison with some of the characteristics, professional and personal, that the board is desiring as well. Very often, that's the case. It's less than 7% that when you have that type of critiquing going on.
Ms.
It's a
Limon.
good question.
So I actually have a couple questions. So I just want, I know that the proposal says actually that we would have Phil Kwan and Kent Bechler as our leads, so it
Yes.
would not be the two of you, correct?
No, it's going to be us.
Oh, it is? So
Yes, and they're in the background as one of the partners and so forth.
Okay, so it would be the two
Yeah.
of you. Can you talk a little bit more about what happens between step 5 and 6, specifically when you have the 8 candidates that you've narrowed? I've only been part of one superintendent search, and that actually had a 2-part interview for the board, which was selecting the finalists, so it was like a semifinal and final interview. I don't see that or read that through your proposal.
And that's traditionally the way that we do it. We would bring in anywhere from 4 to 6 candidates in the morning, interview them, spend roughly an hour with them, and then usually in the afternoon, you try to bring back, sometimes it's 1, but most of the time, 90% of the time, it's 2 candidates that you bring back and decide, have a second interview, and if you come to consensus that that's your best candidate, it's up to you. Remember, it's your search.
So then you would be okay with us if we had some input on what the semifinal, final interview would look like? I mean, if it's
Absolutely.
okay, good.
Yeah.
And then another question, you said that your price was really all-inclusive. A couple questions about that. Does the listing on is it EdJoint or,
Yeah.
is that included? or is
Included,
or is
EdCal
that-
is included.
So, okay, so all
All
those
those
are
pieces.
included?
All those pieces.
What about post-decision-making, a transitional meeting? And
We have been willing in the past to have that initial meeting with the board and the superintendent. And David and I were just talking about, is both of us are strong believers in having an entry plan. So we help the new superintendent develop that entry plan as part of the process. And a lot of it also depends, too, is are you getting an experienced superintendent in the process or a new superintendent? And you never know until you see the candidate pool.
But you would not facilitate a transitional meeting?
Yes, we would.
Oh, you would, okay,
Yeah,
so you would.
yes, we would.
And that's included in the price, or is that separate?
David, I think we would.
No, we would, definitely.
Okay.
I'm currently doing the Bakersfield search. As a matter of fact, that question was asked by one of the board members. I apologize again. That question
It's so that
was
we
asked.
can get you on camera.
Excellent. That question was asked.
You're both on TV, so.
Thank you,
Yes.
Dr. Cash. But, Ms. Limon, that question was asked, and we would be happy to do that. Not only that 90-day plan, that strategic plan, that transition meeting, that type of thing is, in my opinion, critical, as a matter of fact. Going back to one of your questions, if I may, depending upon how the board wants to create this function as well is critical. We've had situations where you've interviewed that one day, but you want to see the top 2 candidates on a more casual basis and bring them back and talk to them about their family, their hobbies, things of that sort. So it can be customized.
Great,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Ms. Parker.
I want you to know that in years past, I've been on the recipient end of the reference check from Leadership Associates and been incredibly impressed with the grilling that I was put through about candidates for certain positions. I was like, wow, okay. You guys do a really great job with that. And so thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, my colleagues are asking a lot of the questions that I would have had. Some of the things, it feels like a lifetime ago in some ways, Dr. Cash, but it wasn't that long ago that we were going through this. It's been less than 5 years, and so it's all sort of starting to come back to me. And we had the whole discussion about confidential versus non-confidential back then, and it doesn't sound like things have changed dramatically. We did do a confidential process last time. But we see, some of these really big districts or the community college districts where they have a more public process, and so it can be hard to judge what we should do for our own community, what fits best for us. And so we appreciate your flexibility, because I don't think any of us would have known or decided at this point what we should do. And I guess my only other question, so you say you're present during the interviews themselves. Are you present for both the semifinal and the final interview?
Yeah, one of the things we want to do is, we want it to go well. So even bringing the candidates in and out of the room as part of the process, we sit in the back out of view of the candidate, take our own notes so that we learn, because there may be a candidate that did not do particularly well with you, but we can help, and we want to help potential candidates.
Gotcha. And then it would be up to the board to help you define the constituent groups, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, and I'm trying to remember where in the little blue. Is
That would be right at the
step one?
beginning, one of the first meetings we
Second.
have with the
Step two?
entire board.
Okay, great.
We
All
would
right.
do two things at that board meeting usually. It's one, take input from you as to the characteristics you're looking for in that new superintendent. And the other piece of it would be is developing a timeline as part of that process. So all the details, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the community piece? Do you do online surveying? Do you
We do.
do public meetings? If so, how many public meetings do you do? Focus groups? I'm not sure if you can.
We do all of the above.
Okay.
Okay. We have a great online survey that we will bring to you a draft of, and if you want to make modifications to it, we can make modifications to that online survey. We'll work with you to develop all the different constituency groups that you want us to meet with. And sometimes David and I work together, and other times we'll work as individuals depending on how many people we're having to see.
And there certainly are the traditional groups, your civic organizations, Rotary, City Council perhaps, DLAC, PTA, but there might be some outliers that you'll actually want us and desire us and direct us to create that type of stakeholder conversation, whether it's in La Cuesta Gym, or whether it's, where it's more comfortable with a ministry group perhaps that you've brought forward that you think are important to listen and hear. And so that helps develop that transparency that is of a concern.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Idelson.
Just a question to understand. So generally, you put out, Ms. Parker mentioned Ed Cal and postings, but then are there a certain number of candidates that you basically seek out their interest? And what percentage generally are coming to you versus you going to them and saying, are you interested in this position?
And I would give you a rough estimate. I'm going to tell you just roughly you'll have somewhere between 30 and 35 potential applications that'll go through the process. And I would tell you probably of that group, probably 25 would be folks that we've talked to one way or another somewhere along the line, or that, sometimes there's somebody who's being very successful in a district and maybe they've been there for quite some time and they're looking for another challenge. Well, after we understand what it is we're looking for in Santa Barbara, we may go to them and say, hey, we've got this great opportunity, what do you think? That's what we're looking for. We're not looking for people who are running from one job to another. We're looking for people who are in a job and being successful so that we can see they have a track record of success.
Okay, and you mentioned a good knowledge of California. Are you also sort of surveying the whole country, or how wide, West Coast? Or how-
Yeah, you can go to our website. Our website is leadershipassociates.org. And that's where most of our out-of-state candidates come from. There's a lot of folks who, but what ends up most boards get a little bit concerned about their knowledge, for example, of California school finance, and tend to gravitate to the California candidates. Even though sometimes, and I placed a superintendent who had been here for California for many years, went to New York, was successful in New York, and then came back. So there are people who come and look at our site all the time.
Okay.
If I may add for just a quick moment, having been a recently retired superintendent from Southern California, your mission statement, the foundation that Dr. Cash and you folks have created here will draw outstanding candidates. I know that as a colleague of Dr. Cash. I know that as it relates to the reputation that you folks have. And so my point simply being is that pool of candidates will certainly be there.
This is a lighthouse district. We know that.
Yes, Mr. Herron.
One more technical question, and don't mean to be negative, but on page 15, you talk about in the event we're not successful and you have to go out again for looking for more candidates.
Yeah.
It says you'll do that for us if the majority of the board stays the same. It's highly possible I won't be rerunning again in November. 2 other members are up for election, and there's even another little kicker in there that this very likely will not be the same majority. Any way you would consider taking that out of a contract?
Sure, we could work with
Thank you.
that. That's not an issue. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I wanted to ask, and just have you elaborate a little more, is in a community like Santa Barbara, we have a lot of interest in what happens to our schools from a variety of different constituency groups. And one of the things that could happen in a superintendent search, and you could see it in different places, or have seen or become aware of other superintendent searches that kind of go off track. And so one of the big questions that I had was to have you talk to me a little bit more about how we keep and make sure that a superintendent search, if you're selected or not, would keep on track. And that has to do a lot with your statement about making sure we have a good process of looking at backgrounds of all the candidates. But it could be that you didn't, or you did a really good job, but there was one little piece that just comes out from somewhere else, right field, so to speak. So talk to me a little bit more about how, whether you've experienced that happen in any of your searches and how you dealt with it.
I can tell you probably one of the toughest searches that I've ever done was the Oakland search, because there are so many powerful constituencies that could easily drag it off in different kinds of directions. So you just stay with it. We've done enough of these. We know when it isn't going in the right direction. And I've done 40, and to tell you the truth, I have not had that kind of problem. And I can imagine, for example, being here with the university, how sometimes an organization such as that could attempt to divert the process. And I had a chance to work as a superintendent in Fullerton and with Cal State Fullerton, and I saw some of those kinds of activities at times.
Okay. Thank you.
But the vetting process, Dr. Paz, it's very, very comprehensive, from financial background checks to criminal checks and so on. So I like to think that we do our homework prior to delivering those top 5, let's say.
And I appreciate that. I think it's one of the things that's really important for me as a board member,
Yes,
because I like to, just like when you do personal reviews, there should be no surprises.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, Ms. Limon.
Sorry, one more technical question. You mentioned that you have a survey that you use for community feedback. Is that a bilingual survey?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. And if there's questions directly in Spanish, I speak Spanish, and so as a result, we can certainly take care of it that way. I noticed the gentleman coming up to the podium earlier with the translators. We typically utilize those as well, simply for the ease of the meetings and or the time spent accordingly. Trying to translate back and forth can take up a lot of time.
All right, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board? Is there any other, we still have a few more minutes before the next
we're good.
review. You want to add anything before you leave?
I would tell you that we're very excited about the opportunity, should it arise, to do the search here in Santa Barbara. It really is a lighthouse district. We liked the challenges. I mean, I've done little tiny districts up such as Cabrillo, up in Half Moon Bay, but it's really fun to do a district that it's much more complicated. And this is a complicated search, to be very truthful with you. So it's one that takes a little bit more time and a little more thought. So the challenge of doing that, I think, intrigues both of us.
And of course, I'll be selfish and say that it'll allow me to come up here and go to Super Rica. But thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for being honest.
Thank you.
And if there's nothing else, I just want to thank both of you for taking the time and coming up here to present to us. So I really appreciate that on behalf of the board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Likewise. Thank you.
This is like a big job. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to welcome both of you. And please, it's kind of warm in here, so if you feel the need to take off your jacket, your coat, it's perfectly okay. We're doing that up here, so please excuse us. So whenever you're ready to start, go ahead, and then we'll have try to allow enough time for questions from the board.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Nice to see all of you again, and it's really a pleasure to be here and an honor to be here. Didn't know if we were going to make it, though, because there's fog and raining outside and trucks, but we got here just in time, so it's great. First of all, let me introduce her. She'll introduce herself. This is Dr. Maria Ott. You have her resume in your booklet, but why don't you go ahead, Maria?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. This is one of my favorite places, and it's very nice to meet all of you. I've heard so many fine things about you over the years from your superintendent. I am a part of the faculty at USC Ross Cyr, but I come from 14 years as a superintendent. My last district was Roland Unified, which is in the San Gabriel Valley. I was superintendent there for 7 years. Wonderful district. I was also superintendent for 7 years in the Little Lake City School District, which is Santa Fe Springs, Norwalk, and Downey area, if you know that part of LA County. And in between those two 7-year periods of being a superintendent, I spent 5 years in LA Unified as the senior deputy with Roy Romer. He was a non-traditional superintendent, and I was asked to come and be the educational deputy to support him during the time that he was in LA Unified. I, this year, started up a new program at USC called the Urban Superintendent's Academy in partnership with AASA, supporting efforts to try to find more diverse leadership for urban districts. So that's a little bit about me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
That's Maria Ott. She's really smart, and that's why she's here, to make sure that I'm not going to mess up in anything. Let me talk to you a little bit about our search process with HYA. You may know, but I will share with you, we've done searches in Downey Unified, Riverside, Santa Ana. We just finished the search in LA Unified and appointed their superintendent there, a wonderful African-American woman, first woman they've had in Los Angeles Unified, so we're really proud of that. So we know how to do searches. But the issue for us with what we do is, you've probably heard this from every search firm, but basically this is your search. This is probably going to be one of the most important decisions you're going to make. And you have to be able to be comfortable with whoever you hire, because they're going to be tied to your hip for the next 3 or 4 months to ensure that you get the quality of leader that comes into Santa Barbara Unified that can carry on what you've established as a board over the last 5 years with this incorrigible superintendent you have here. But basically, what I want to be able to do with you right now is let you know that it's nice to be back in Santa Barbara. I was telling Maria about all the focus groups and the stakeholders that I met with last time, and the number of schools you have now, and of course you've unified, which is wonderful, and I've been with you since then. But the high schools, the 23 schools you have in your district and so forth, and Santa Barbara High School, San Marcos, the 4 comprehensive high schools, I really feel that I know your community, which is really, really important, because when you send somebody out, whether it be us or somebody else, they've got to represent the Board of Education. And I want to preface my comments by saying this. This is not only your search. but I'm encouraging you to have a transparent search, so the community doesn't feel that you're hiding the ball on them, because that's when you begin to have problems with the search process. It's got to be a transparent process. You've got to have confidentiality in your survey, in your process of the search, and we'll talk more about that. But I want to be able to hand out a calendar that I put together for you, and this is basically a draft. It doesn't mean you have to stay with this calendar, but I wanted to kind of walk you through what it's going to be like to be working with Maria and myself in the next 3 or 4 months, so you can get an idea of what this process is all about. I do want to make a couple comments, though. I was really taken back by your mission statement. I think you really encapsulate what this board stands for and what this stands for in the kids in your community. But more importantly, this is what captured, because the first time I've seen it, every child, every chance, every day. That's pretty awesome, that you have that philosophy to make sure that every child's needs are met in this district. But basically, I want to be able to go through this document, because this will be able to hopefully answer a lot of questions you have, and I would welcome any questions you may have throughout this process. But Maria and I basically have put this calendar together, and you'll see it in bright yellow letters. It's a sample. It doesn't mean that you're going to have to stay with this, but this sample calendar is something that I hopefully will have you be able to walk through that. Number one, I think that if in fact we are fortunate enough to be selected to be your search consultants, we'd like to have a meeting with you as soon as possible to do a planning session. And this is what this calendar's all about. I'd stated February, but it may be earlier than February. But we want to spend at least a couple hours with you to go over dates that are really critical and what the process you would like to have happen in your community. And you'll see there, if you take a look at this calendar that I have given you, you'll see there, we will, once we have this planning session with you, you will identify dates that you will commit to us, that you will be able to meet with us on a one-on-one basis, because I want to hear from you, from Ed, Kate, Monique, Gail, and Pedro. What are some of the challenges you're going to be facing in this district in the next 3 to 5 years? What are some of the things that you believe that are the strengths of the district? And I want to hear what the characteristics you're looking for in the next superintendent, whether he or she, whoever he or she may be in this district. And we'll do that individually with each one of you. We'd like to spend at least 45 minutes to an hour with you. And we'll be taking copious notes during this process, because what this will lead to is a kind of a compilation of all your input that the board has about what they're looking for in the next superintendent. We want to spend at least 2 days in your district. Here at the district office, we want to be able to go out into your community and have some community forums. And yes, I can puedo hablar español, and she can speak Spanish as well.
Yo también.
And we want to be able to speak to your community in a community forum to get their input. And again, we'll be taking all these copious notes. One factor that we started about 5 years ago is an online survey, and I wanted Maria to talk to you about that. And so quickly, would you talk to them about the online survey?
One of the things that we realize when we work with communities that some people like the face-to-face, but that now we have technology tools that give us different kind of access to input from individuals. And so having an online survey that is available in any of the languages that are needed in your community gives individuals who may choose to communicate with you through the survey an opportunity to do that and give their input. It also gives some flexibility to people who are leading busy lives and are very, have a hard time maybe making it to a meeting. So it's just one additional component to help inform the profile of your future leader. And it, will probably in your community be a evidence to the community about how much you are interested in hearing from them, because if they can't make it to a meeting, you have given them other options that are available to put in, give you that input. So, you know, I really, having just come off of a search week, this was a tremendous tool. I think you're going to find it very valuable as it informs those characteristics that you're going to be looking for in that next superintendent. Knowing that David Cash is not, there's not a clone of him out there, but to find someone who is of that caliber.
During those 2 days, when we meet with you, and during the planning session, we're going to ask you, who are the key stakeholders we should be meeting with? You know your community. You know the people we need to meet with. And we will target those people, and I'll get Sandra to draft a letter that we've already drafted that'll go out to these people, inviting them on behalf of the board to spend some time with us, to be able to get input that the board would love to have them give us. Again, you're generating that connection with the community, which is really critical during a search process, especially here in Santa Barbara. So we will be here for those 2 days, and if you want us to be here for 2 nights to be able to be the community, we'd be able to do that. It's whatever you'd like to have us be able to do. You'll notice in that first block there, she talked about the community online service. If you take a look at the next block, it's a special board meeting. Once we get all this information, we will meet with you, the Board of Education, here in this room in an open meeting and give you the findings of all the information we got from the classified employees, from the administrators, from the teachers, community members, stakeholders, hopefully civic leaders, community presidents, university presidents, to be able to tell us what they think that you should be having here in this district. And we'll share that with you, and we call that a leadership profile. And that profile will be given to you. I would recommend that you put that on your website, the executive summary, and I'll tell you why. Because when we start recruiting, the question is, here's 2 questions that most people will ask about this job here. What's the board like? Secondly, is it a place where I really want to work, and what are some of the issues in the district? This leadership profile, I will tell them, go on the website, Superintendent Search, and they will see that leadership profile so they can determine whether they have the capabilities to come to Santa Barbara Unified, which is really, really an important piece of the search process. So we do that. You will notice also on there, I'm asking you whether you want to have a statewide search only in California or a national search. There's 503 people just like us throughout the country that we can go on a national search if you'd like to have us do that. But as many of you know, and I'm sure Dave knows, I know about everybody in this state. So we'd be able to go out and really recruit those people that would really be a match for you. At the end of that leadership profile, you're going to see some real strong characteristics of what you're looking for, what the community is looking for, and basically what some of the challenges, what some of the strengths are of the district. That's what we'll be looking for in the next superintendent, is a match. I'm going to use this phraseology with you. I've been married 45 years, and I've been blessed because my wife stays with me, okay? But more importantly, a match for this board is like a marriage. You've got to find somebody that you're going to be comfortable with. You've got to find someone that can lead this district to the next level. And basically, that's what the leadership profile will do. You'll also notice that in the next section there, it talks about the board will receive a password. Because here's what happens. We'll come up at the planning session, and I'm going to suggest to you that I'd like to have at least 4 or 5 weeks to be able to recruit, to be able to put it in EdCal if that's where you want, and we have something, we'll work with you, we'll pass it to all the board members before we submit it to EdCal. And that's part of our service that we will do that. But more importantly, once the deadline closes, we will begin to vet all the applications. And I'm going to tell you right now, you will not have a problem finding somebody that wants to come to Santa Barbara Unified. I'm just telling you right now. I'm anticipating anywhere from 30 to 50 applicants. But some of these applicants may be a kindergarten teacher that thinks they can be the next superintendent in Santa Barbara Unified. So what we do is we go through every application and vet them, both Maria and I. Then Maria and I will get together, give me your top 15. And give me a rationale for the ones you selected, and I'll give you my top 15. And from that process, we then basically will spend a Saturday or a Friday interviewing what we believe are the top 15 people that maybe you may want to look at. That does not preclude you from looking at every application. I will give you a password that you at home can get on your computer and take a look at every application. And when we come back to meet with you about presenting a slate of candidates, we'll present probably 5 to 7. And the reason we do that, our firm does that, is because I want to see the whites of their eyes. Everybody can write a great resume. Everybody can have some great references. But when I call somebody and start vetting them and talking to them, I'll give you an example. Somebody says they're a great instructional leader. And I ask them this question, and I will ask this question in case anybody's in the audience. Tell me how you implemented the California standards in your district. Well, this is a real live response. I just turned it over to my assistant superintendent of instruction and curriculum. Another question, instruction and curriculum. I just turned it over to, I want to know that they're going to be the instructional leader for your district. And the only way I can do that is when I interview them and talk to them face to face. That's where I find out whether they have the qualities that you're looking for in this district. But that password also comes a confidentiality form. And that form I will ask you to sign, because one thing that we want to be able to do is when I'm tapping people on the shoulder that don't even know they want to come to Santa Barbara Unified, and when Maria's doing that, I want to be able to ensure the integrity of that candidate, that he's involved in the process, and whether he or she is going to continue on. And that will go on until they get to the finals, then all bets are off. They have to inform their board. And many superintendents have in their contract that they have to inform their board if they're looking for another job. But we will canvass the state or the nation, whatever you'd like to be able to do, and we'll ferret all that out when you tell us what you want in the search process. Let me talk about where it really gets to be critical for the board. Once we come to you with a slate of candidates, I'm gonna get, are you recording this? Is that why this? You're on TV. Okay, okay, great. Hello, how you doing? Once you hear from us the 5 or 7 people that we recommend, you may say, well, I saw Jim Smith and I was really impressed with him. Why isn't he one of your top candidates? And we better have an answer for that. And you may say, well, we want to see Jim Smith, and that's your prerogative to do that. The only thing I say to you is once we present these candidates to you, it's your selection, not ours. Because we're experienced at this, we're recommending the people that we believe match the best characteristics that your community, you, your staff have said you're looking for. And don't leave out the classified employees, because they are the ones that can really tell you what they're looking for. And these are all recommendations for your board, because you're the ones that will be making the final decision. Once you decide that we want to interview these 5 to 7 or whatever many you want to interview, keep in mind our process is this. You will come on a Saturday or a Friday or whenever you decide to come, and you will interview them. It's a 2-hour interview. I will work with you on questions that you will want to ask them. It's a 2-hour interview, so if you have 7, that's 14 hours. We recommend no more than 5, 6 to be able to do that, but it's your prerogative to be able to do that. At the end of that interview, and I need to tell you, I'm not in the room, and nor is she, because I want them to interview for you, not for me, because maybe I can get them a job in this next search that I do. We don't have a stable of people. We don't continually regurgitate the same people over and over and over again. We will handpick those people that you have identified for us of the characteristics you're looking for here in Santa Barbara Unified. Then what we'll do is after the end of that first or second day, we will come in and we'll do a little process with you and say, who is the least favorite candidate you want to see come back? They're off the island. And we'll do that until you get to the final 3, 4, or 5. I would recommend a minimum of 3, and I'll tell you why. I've been involved in this business now since 2006. You get some superintendents or some directors or some assistant superintendents that change their mind and pull out of the process. If you only have 2, or if you only have initially 2, and you're stuck with 1. Now what happens if that If you want to do the search over again, we do it over again. No cost to you. We do it all over again. And then, of course, the finals, you do the same thing. You're going to be meeting with them, but it's not a scripted interview. What we do is set up a situation that you can meet with these individuals individually and ask them further questions that you want to follow up on and get to know them a little bit more informally, what they're like. And you will have that, and then basically you will make the decision on who your final candidate will be. That's kind of our process, but you will be informed all the way through the process. There's nothing fancy about what we do. We're very straightforward. We'd like to have you be engaged in the process. We want to make sure that you are well aware of what we're doing, and we will be able to give that information to you as we go through. I know I only have 20 minutes, and I want to be able to answer any questions you may have. Maria, do you have anything else?
Now, we're ready for your questions and hope you have, an opportunity to look at the materials and ask us anything about our own experiences and whatever you need to know.
Questions?
Mr. Heron.
Yeah, a couple questions. First, Rudy, it's nice to see you again.
Nice seeing you too, Ed.
And all I can tell you, we were very happy 5 years ago with finding Dr. Cash for us. So, and we appreciate all the times we've met with you from a coaching standpoint. So you come with high hopes.
Thank you.
But tell me, what's the difference today as far as maybe the potential pool of candidates versus where we were 5 years ago in a potential pool of candidates at that time? What are there differences?
Well, I'll be real candid with you. You want to be able to get the best qualified candidate that's out there in the market. But I'm going to say one thing, and I want to make sure that you think about this. You want to hire someone with a proven track record. You don't want to have a new beginner come to Santa Barbara Unified and hope they can make it. You want to find someone with a proven track record. The difference today, Ed, is this. There are people out there that think they can do this job. This is a very unique district with very unique needs, with very diversified populations, with foundations, with partnerships, with things that you want to continue to have. I mean, your website is outstanding. I mean, I don't know, I'm sure, Dave, you didn't have anything to do with it, but I mean, basically, the website is really outstanding. And basically, today's candidates for you, this board, you can't have someone that basically does not know how to work with the board, develop relationships, or maybe 5 years ago, there was more of a plethora of superintendents out there looking for jobs. Our search firm, we go out and handpick people that we think might meet the expectations you're looking for, which is really a big difference. This is how we found this guy, if you recall. Dave Cash was a proven winner, a proven track record. And so we really lured him to come to Santa Barbara Unified, and that was very important for us because you need to have a proven leader in this district.
Okay, second question, you started off by saying you want this to be a totally transparent process. In your proposal, you give us at least 4 scenarios of what transparency means. Last time, it was totally exclusive. We didn't let anybody know Dr. Cash was chosen until we announced it. But there's other options, from totally transparent, that everybody is aware of everybody at the final, down to only the last 2 or 3 names are given out versus no names given out. What are you recommending?
Well, when I say transparent process, I think you need to include your community.
In what?
In the survey, online survey,
Okay.
focus groups,
Okay.
that they have input, that the board cares about what they're saying, what they want the community to hear for you folks here. That's what I call about transparency.
Some people would say transparency is letting the community know the names
Well-
before we select somebody. Is that your definition of transparency?
No.
Okay, that's-
But basically, you have a newspaper here that I'm very well aware of, okay? They're going to want to know who the candidates are. Again, confidentiality, because we may have some sitting superintendents. We may not have sitting superintendents. And we want to make sure we protect the integrity of where they're working now. And so unless the board tells me differently, we don't let any names out until they get to the finals.
So that's your recommendation,
That's my
completely
recommendation.
confidential?
Completely confidential. Maria, did you have something?
I just want to reinforce that. I will tell you that in the last superintendent position that I accepted, I would have withdrawn had my name come out. I could not have had my name out there. And I can give you examples of others. So I really, for the kind of search that you want to produce the very best experienced individuals, I recommend that it be confidential till the very end.
Then one follow-up.
Sure.
In your proposal on page 5, you say that if it's not successful within the first 2 years, you will do it over again with the caveat that the majority of the board stays the same. It's highly likely that that might be the case. I won't be here. 2 others are up for election, and there's even a third possibility in the mix. Would you waive or change that clause for us?
I'll commit to this board now if that happens, but I will guarantee you that whoever you select will be here longer than 2 years.
Okay, just want to make sure, though, that
I will do
it's on
that.
record. Thank
Okay,
you.
it's on the record. Questions? Any other questions?
Ms. Parker?
I was trying to remember because, of course, HYA was the firm that we used last time, and you actually weren't our lead consultant. Was it Carolyn that was our lead consultant
Well,
last
Carolyn
time?
was here because I was on my vacation for my
Yeah.
41st anniversary.
Yeah,
So
okay.
she was here, but
For some of
but
it.
once I came,
Yeah. And so you are not present during the interviews themselves, but
Right.
we go through a coaching process and back and forth about developing interview questions. And then, as I recall, you were very insistent about 3 separate nights to meet with the finalists. And I see that again, and so I assume that that is a practice that you use with all the districts that you, or do you vary that up depending on the district?
again, Ms. Parker, it's up to what you want to do. Do I prefer 3 nights? I don't think that's necessary, but we give you the latitude to be able to do that.
Okay.
Some districts like to take the final 2 candidates or 3 candidates out to a dinner to see them in a social engagement. Other boards like to do is bring them in, let's do an informal. You said this during your first interview. I want to follow up on that. You really get to know them a lot better in that environment. So whatever you decide, if in fact we are selected during the planning session, you will tell us what you want us to do.
Great. And then your price does not include the, like the follow-up workshop, the retreat essentially, but you would do that for us for X amount of money afterwards, correct?
The issue with Santa Barbara, because I hate to say this, but I'm so vested in this district, I will come back and do whatever workshop you need to make sure that the transition of the new superintendent and with the board is going to happen. That's very important. And I know that something on a transition, whenever you select somebody, I recommend what you did last time. And that was you brought the superintendent in, you brought a facilitator in, you set up protocols. But prior to that, I would really encourage that new superintendent to come back and meet with Dave, meet with the board on an informal basis. So that transition is going to happen and really happen in a very effective manner because your community deserves that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I had sort of a general question right now in terms of, obviously this depends on the district you're working with, but say like you just finished working with LAUSD, they were looking nationally.
Yeah.
We're a much smaller school district than that, obviously.
By a few students.
Yeah. But what has been your experience in terms of the number of searches that really fall on the more national side versus the more local side, broadly speaking?
Well, first of all, the national searches that I've done, like LA and larger districts like San Francisco and Sacramento and so forth, it's more of an urban setting. These people are probably have come from another district with 2 or 3 years before they get run out of town. That's natural there. I think when you have a setting of the size of district you have, it's more of an intimate relationship. That's what you've got to really develop. Whichever search firm you hire, you've got to have a relationship with that search firm and trust them, that they're going to be able to work with you and do the things you'd like to have done. Like example, Ed talks about confidentiality and transparency. I'm really upfront what that means to me. You can't have somebody up here that you're working with that's going to tell you something and then turn around and do something else. The transition is really important. I think it's important for this district because you have really moved the needle to a positive point in this district. I mean, I can recall back what it was like 5 or 6 years ago here. And now the community is going to demand whoever this board selects, it's got to be someone that's going to continue to move the district forward. And those are the types of people that I want to be able to have. I don't like to sit in, nor does Maria, during the interview process. Because, unfortunately, a lot of firms have a stable of people. And they're not only interviewing for you, but they're interviewing for the search consultants. I want to be able to come back and let you, and I'll put each one of you on the spot, tell me about Dave Smith. What was your impression of Dave? Kate, what was your impression? So everybody hears your positives and negatives of each candidate. I think it's important that this board continue to work together as a governance team, and you can do that here in Santa Barbara. LA Unified with 7 board members that are politically engaged and looking at a national search with big-time superintendents for a district of 655,000, it's a little different ballgame. I think it's a much better chance for you to really zero in on what you're looking for and what we can bring to this table to make sure that you're going to get the best possible person. I make a commitment to you today, and Maria says I'm crazy by saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Our job is to make it so difficult for you when you get to the finals that you don't know which candidate you really want, because they're going to be that quality that you're going to have. I'm convinced that people would give their eye tooth to come to Santa Barbara Unified, because you have something that's really moving in the right direction here, and it's a great board, and that's really important to people. I don't know if I answered your question,
Yeah.
Mr. Paz.
I have another question.
Sure.
So one of the things that I'm thinking about as you're speaking is that you do know the district. But in that process, or as we move forward, if you were selected, what would you do to assure that you are still looking at it with a fresh set of eyes, that you're not making any assumptions about what you do know about us, even as board members, what you do know about us? Because at this point in time, you do have more information about each of us as individual board members, and so what would you do?
Well, what I would do is like I would do in any other search. I would really portray what this district is all about, but more importantly, I would have those candidates take a look at your leadership profile, and they would be able to see what some of the issues are, because they're going to be right there in black and white. But for me, the reason I know this district is because I've been here. But importantly to me is your foundation, Santa Barbara Foundation. I'm not going to treat them any differently. I'm not going to treat that cadre of Latinos that happen to be in one part of your district any differently. When I go out and we go out and talk to the community, it's with a fresh set of eyes, because I haven't been here on a regular basis in the last maybe 3 years. So I think it's important, again, that whoever you select is able to bring that passion for whoever is going to come here to do a great job for you. And that's really, really important, because you don't want to have just a placeholder for 2 years, 3 years. You can have whoever you want, but I'm recommending you don't do that. Because if you take a look at districts like yourself, and I use this in my superintendent's class at USC all the time, those districts that are successful have a continuity of board members, have a continuity of a superintendent more than 2 or 3 years. And you take a look at districts up and down the state, and you were at CSBA a while back. the big issue with boards is, we have a new superintendent, we have new board members, we've got to start all over again. So you want to be able to have some consistency, and I think that that's what I would bring to this search process, is a consistency of integrity and consistency of being a good listener and be able to make sure that I meet the needs that you're asking me to meet.
If I could just add that I would look forward to meeting each and every one of you and hearing what your hopes and dreams are for the future for your district. And I will be bringing a different perspective because I don't know you in the same way. And so we will work as a team. And I can assure you I tend to be a person who digs deeply. And he knows this about me because we, do work together. But I tend to ask lots of questions, too, to get clarity, because I think you have to have good clarity when you're looking to the future and you're making a decision about that individual who's going to help take you to the next level. We're going to hear a lot from your community and from the different groups that are important to you, your partners, your stakeholders, your parents, your students. We're going to hear a lot of voices, and you'll have that input, but we're also going to hear from you. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Maria.
Any other comments, questions, board?
Monique, I can't believe you're not asking me any questions.
I think my colleagues have asked the questions. We've gone through the proposal, and I also think there's, some experience in working with the firm. So that's why it's unusual that I'm not asking questions.
I told my partner here tonight, the people that'll ask questions tonight, Ed, Kate, Monique, for sure.
Sorry to let you down.
No, you didn't. No, it was just a real pleasure and a real honor to have an opportunity to come back and let you know what we can do to help you with your process.
Do you want to add anything before you still have some time and the next folks are still some time away? So,
okay.
yeah.
Maria, do you want to add anything?
I would just reinforce the issue of continuity and how important it is to have stability in a system. It's an area that I have not only studied extensively, but I've practiced in my own leadership. So when I was first a superintendent in the Little Lake School District and had many, many opportunities, I made a commitment to that district. And when I went to LA with Roy Romer, it would have been easy there were many opportunities to go to districts, and I stayed with him for 5 years to support him so that he could be successful. And then I went to Roland, which had many distinct communities. Unlike yours, we had different cities there, West Covina and Walnut and La Puente, and we had unincorporated Roland Heights, but stability was so important. So I just would score the fact that in this process to be looking to the future for innovation, what's the next step, what can a leader bring that would open up some new thinking, even with having had a great superintendent, someone with, as you said, a new set of eyes looking at it may see some opportunities to take you to that next place that you envision yourself going, but also someone who's going to make a commitment to your district and who's going to be here with you to do the heavy lifting. That I've always thought it was the heavy lifting that was the most rewarding part of being a superintendent and being able to be in that position to create a culture of excellence in an organization. So,
thank you.
I think my final comments are pretty straightforward. You have a tremendous challenge ahead of you as a board. Your community is going to be looking to what you're going to do with this to continue the momentum that you have. I think it's really a critical decision. It's going to be one of the most important decisions with 2 or possibly 3 of you up for re-election. But the important thing is you've got to find the right person. You've got to have the confidence in whoever you select this evening. I don't know how many firms you're looking at. Excuse me, but you've got to find the person that you feel really comfortable with that will help you and work with you and be your voice in the community, which is really, really important. Again, I thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you the best, and I'm sure that you will find a terrific leader to move your district forward. Nice seeing all of you again.
Thank you to both of you, and on behalf of the board, we want to thank you for your time that you took with us to give us a sense of where you're coming from, and have a wonderful evening. Enjoy Santa Barbara a little bit.
It's a beautiful community. You're so fortunate to wake up every day in this amazing place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Drive
you.
safely.
Thank you.
Indulging us in doing this electronically and with all the difficulties we have. Our consultant that was to be there tonight and presenting these just had a medical issue with her family and had to be with her family tonight. So I apologize for that. I do appreciate this opportunity. My name is Tom Jacobson. I am the CEO of Motor McPherson Jacobson, and we represent the California School Board Association. We are their search firm that searches for that. I will be working from a bond proposal that says, I hope you have this, and that's what I will be working from, and I will do that. Realize I have 20 minutes, I'm just going to highlight some of the things that we do, and then obviously give you plenty of time to answer questions about us and our firm. So let me start off with, we've been in business since 1991. We've conducted over 600 searches across the United States. We are a top national firm. That's over 10 searches. 2 years ago, the California Association of School Boards decided to reach out and send RFPs to different search firms to represent them. And after almost a year of vetting, they chose us. And I told the association I wish that I could hire them for consultants, because they were very thorough in their background checks and what they did for us as we do that. So we got with their endorsement, we are their search firm. So we have over 110 consultants across the United States, but more importantly, we have 14 in California. We have a strong California base of reference as we work there. It will be California consultants that will be working with you. Hard to say that you can choose anybody off our consultant list to work with you based on their availability as we do this. The things I want to point out before I get into our protocol: number one, we don't hire superintendents. That's not what we do. What we do is we provide you a decision-making model, and we take you through that. We want you to own this process. We want you to feel invested in this process. We're there to advise you and take you through the process, but want you to know this is your decision, your process, and we're there to help you through it as we go about it. When we chose to become a national firm, we took a look at the other national firms, and so what would distinguish us from them? We have hung our hat on transparency. We believe in a very transparent process, and in that proposal that you have, there are numerous editorials and newspaper articles from across the United States that talk about the transparency. It doesn't talk about us. It doesn't talk about McPherson and Jacobson. It talks about the boards and how much the constituents appreciate the ability to be involved in this process of participating. And I'll tell you how we manage that, keeping you in complete control. We are recruiters of talent. This is a very competitive business, and what we want to do is find out what you're looking for. And once you have identified your top selection criteria, we're going to actively recruit individuals that have those skill set as we do that. And then you'll see on our cover there, we have a motto. It's about the kids. Everybody that works for McPherson and Jacobson has been or is involved in public education, and this is our ability to give back to public education as we go about doing this. And important that we have well-grounded in public education. And I want to talk about our retention rate. I think that's fairly important. According to the National School Board Association, the Council of Greater City Schools, average tenure for superintendents across the United States is between 3.6 and 4.6 years. For the past 5 years, 80% of our job for which we placed them. Past 10 years, 60% are still in the job for which we placed them. In the past 15 years, almost 50% of our placements are still on the job for which we placed them. And the importance of that is the research of Marzano and Waters shows that sustainability of leadership increases student achievement. So not only do we want to get a good superintendent for you that's going to be a good match, but that person is going to stay and make a difference in your district. The investment for our search is $19,900, and I'll tell you now what we will do to earn that. If you turn to page 34, I'll briefly go through what we do as we about. The very first thing we do is we meet with you as a board of trustees, and we take you through. I should mention, besides being owner of this business, I was a superintendent for 16 years. For the past 25 years, I've been a professor at the University of Nebraska. And my expertise is human resource management, which is what this business is. And so a lot of what we do is research-based. And I'm going to get into, we start you as a board of trustees, taking you through a consensus decision-making model that is research-based, where you're going to identify your top 4, 5, 6 selection criteria. That's going to help us set a profile so that we can recruit individuals that have those skill sets. We'll work with you to set your timelines and your calendar. We backload it based on when you want to hire somebody, and we build it around your availability. So that's one of the first things we do at the first meeting is to set the calendar. We'll talk about advertising venues and how we can get an outreach. One of the best is our website. Being a national firm, we get between 200 and 300,000 hits a month on our website. We'll talk about how we reach out with Ed Calla at Join and then the national media also. We will ask at that first meeting, who are the stakeholder groups you want us to meet with? Again, this transparency piece, we involve your stakeholders at the beginning, and then we recommend that they be involved when you're meeting candidates, and I'll tell you how we do that. But at the very beginning, you tell us who your stakeholders are. Typically, all your internal stakeholders are your teachers, your central office personnel, your principals, your classified staff, your students. We meet with them, and then you tell us who the community folks are that you want us to meet with. We will have community forums, but also any special groups that you want us to meet with. And we've met with governmental agencies, we've met with business members, we've met with chambers, ministerial alliances, whatever it is that you have in your community for us to meet with them. We ask those group 4 questions. First 2 questions are, what are the good things about your community, and what are the good things about your school district? Important for us to know that because we're selling you to the candidates as much as we're trying to get good candidates in front of you. So important that we have a good handle on what you have to offer them. The last 2 questions we ask them are, what are the issues here? If you could talk to the new superintendent as they begin, what would you want him or her to know to be successful? Every school district has issues. It might be inclining enrollment, declining enrollment, facility issues, whatever they are. But it's important that we're able to share that with potential candidates so that they know what the challenges and opportunities are of your school district. And then we ask them the 4th question. Based on that, what do you think the skills, qualities, characteristics are this new person should have to be successful? We take that along with what you as a board of trustees have told us. And again, that is our profile that's going to drive our recruitment. It's also our screening process. And that's a measuring stick that we're going to use to take a look at candidates. In phase 2, we do meet with those stakeholder groups. I already gave you the overview of that and how we do that. We develop promotional literature and brochures that promote your school district. We provide an announcement of vacancy that we'll be doing. We're a turnkey operation. We do everything for you except interview candidates. The only time that we need district office personnel or internal staff is the logistics of our meetings, the place and time for our meetings. So they're not burdened with having to receive and send out any information. We take care of it. Develop a application that's unique to what you're looking for, and we're going to list that selection criteria. We're going to ask the candidates to write to the skills that they have that they would be bringing this. We actively recruit individuals, and this is a big part of this business, is that being a national firm, we reach out and know a lot of people in this business, and once you've told us what you're looking for, we'll be sending out to our 110 consultants across the United States a profile of what you're looking for, and saying, who do you know that might be a good match here? Who do you know that would be somebody that we should be talking to come into this district to be able to do that? And that's a big piece of that. We'll work with you on identifying your interview. What we recommend is that there be a 1 day per candidate. They're going to come in and meet with various stakeholder groups. I'll talk about that a little later. Your involvement is to have the interview and to meet with them in an informal session. We'll provide you with compensation information. We will do a study as to what like-sized districts are paying in California and districts that have recently hired. We don't care what you pay your superintendent. Our fee is not dependent on that. But we'll gather information for you and give you that information. What we want to happen is we don't want you to have to pay one dime more than you have to attract a quality superintendent. But we also don't want you to lose somebody over a couple $1,000. And so we'll give you information so you know what the market is. During the process, we keep all the applicants informed of their status. In our home office, we have 4 individuals that work here, and one of them is assigned just to work strictly with the applicants. All of our applications come on electronically and are managed in our office here. Page 3, and I'm now on page 37, and I think this is something that we do better than any of the other firms. And this is the vetting the candidates. What we do is we sit down and we have a matrix that we use based on the criteria you've given us, and we read through every file, and we begin comparing them against that criteria. We begin doing our reference checks, and in the 40-plus years I've been in HR, I've yet to find a candidate that puts references down that doesn't like them. We know that. We start with them. We have our list of questions that we're going to ask them in developing our profile. Based on your criteria and other things. But we have 2 questions at the end that are very important. Second to last question, and we learned this along the way as we did it. And that question is there anything in this person's background, if it became public information, would be an embarrassment to this district? We used to say any skeletons, anything I haven't asked you, that's really easy to say no to those. But when you say anything in the background that became public information would be embarrassment. I'm going to tell you 99% of the time there's nothing there, but occasionally there's a hesitation. And we say, we're professional consultants, this is confidential. Tell us what you might know. And just because we heard it from one person doesn't make it true. We will continue to ask and see if we can verify information that we have. The last question we have them is would you tell us or give us a name or 2 or 3 other individuals that can speak to this person's ability? They do. We call them and ask them the same list of questions, including would you give us a name or 2 to 3 individuals that can speak to this person's ability? We go a minimum of 3 removed from primary references. And what we're looking for is consistency of answers. What are we seeing as the strengths? What are we seeing as any deficiencies in these candidates as we're vetting them to do that? Now, when we come and meet with you, we'll have a list of everybody that applied. We don't take anybody's name off the list. These are your candidates. They're not our candidates. But we will prepare for you what we call our short list. Here are the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, that we think are most closely meeting what you're looking for. We'll overview them with you, give them a complete background of you, give you an opportunity to ask us questions about them. And you can then choose to talk about who and how many you wish to bring in for an interview process. We're also able to talk about anybody on that list and why we don't think that they are of the quality you're looking for. But again, they're your candidates. We work with you to develop a set of interview questions and coach you on the interview procedures. Once you've selected, as we meet with the shortlist, let me go back to that. Prior to meeting with you, we call the shortlist individuals, and we say to them, congratulations, you've met our first cut. We're going to present your name to the board tomorrow night. Doesn't mean you're going to get an interview, but are you still interested in the position? Are you interviewing for any other jobs? Will you accept the job if offered? We want to make sure that we have viable candidates in front of you, and that when you make your selection, we'll be able to move forward on that. And so we are working with them all the way through. We take care of all the logistics of the interview process itself. We contact the individuals. We set up the interview. We work with the schedule. In this part, we recommend that, again, with the groups, that they become involved again. I want to go back to the groups when I talked about the questions we asked and the groups we meet with. We know we can't meet with everybody. We can't accommodate their schedules. So we have those same 4 questions at the groups we meet with on SurveyMonkey. And so anybody can give their information. Our goal is there's nobody in your district can say they did not have an opportunity to provide input into this process. Now when we come down to you've selected your shortlist people, we recommend that you have a group of about 8 to 10 that are representative of the groups. Let me use teachers as an example. About 8 to 10 teachers that are representative of your teachers. They're going to have an opportunity to meet the candidate, talk to the candidate, and we tell them they're not interviewing the candidate. Only you as a board of trustees can do that. But they're doing 2 things. They're selling themselves and the school district to the candidate, an important piece of that process. And they're going to provide input to you. They're going to have a form which they fill out. This is John Doe, Jane Doe. Here's what we liked about them. Here's any question we had about them. They're going to put that in a form, in an envelope, and seal it. After you have interviewed all of your candidates, you are then going to open and read those. I sat with the board a couple of years ago. They interviewed 4 candidates. They were deadlocked on 2. After an hour and a half of debate, I said, let's open and read the input forms. And all the groups had 1 candidate above the other one. So meaningful input into your decision as you do this. Sometime one will just come right to the top. I'm going to tell you that some of our competitors will tell you that if we have an open process like this, you're not going to get quality candidates. I'm going to tell you with our retention rate of 85% for 5 years, 60% for 10 years, and 50% for 15 years, we have refuted that. We get good candidates, and we get them in front of you, and we get them in front of your constituents. When people are meaningfully involved in this process, they support your decision. And what we want to do is get the very best people in front of you, and you would have that choice. Typically a 2-person decision. The candidates usually have a significant other or spouse, so in the interview process, we invite them in to be part of the interview day. They're going to get a chance to see your community and things that are important to them, such as housing, shopping, places of worship, recreation. What we want to have happen at the end of the day is the candidate and their significant other get ready to go home and say, what a great spot. We really met some great people. I hope they offer us the job. And so we use that also to sell the candidates on it. We take care of making the arrangements for the final candidate and taking care of their schedule for that. After you have hired your final candidate, let me go back to the shortlist. Once you've selected your shortlist, everybody that applied for the position gets a personalized letter from you. We send it out on your behalf, thanking them for being part of the process. Once you've interviewed, those that came in for the interview get a personal phone call from us saying thank you for being part of this process and letting them know that they were not selected for the process. Your final candidate included in our price, we do a criminal, financial, and academic verification on them so that we've not missed anything. And then we offer our Phase 5, which is on page 40. And what we do is we come back and work with you and your new superintendent, take you through a process where you're going to identify performance objectives for your new superintendent. What are the 2 or 3 things that you want your new superintendent to focus on that first year outside the day-to-day operation of this organization? And we have you then identify your expectations there. Turn to you as a board of trustees and say, what evidence will you accept this person is making progress towards those? And that'll develop your evaluation process towards the performance objectives. With that, we offer a 2-year guarantee. If anything happens, if the person becomes ill, can't continue, whatever, we'll come back and do the search for no additional costs except expenses. On page 59 of the proposal, there's expenses and fees. Those expenses are will be submitted as a not-to-exceed amount. I'm taking a look at my watch. I'm probably getting close to the end of my time. I teach at the university, but I don't lecture this much in my classes. Let me stop talking and respond to whatever questions you have of me.
Question, board? Ms. Limon.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question about the final process, and I think I heard you talk about a semifinal. Can you hear me? Semifinal and final interview? No?
No, I didn't talk about that, but that's something we do, yes.
So can you talk, do we have flexibility to do some of that? If the board wanted to do a semifinal and final interview, is that something that you're?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me, and I forgot to say this at the very beginning. We've got a protocol we recommend to you, but we tailor our searches to what your needs are. And as I train my consultants, I tell them if it's not illegal, immoral, or unethical, we'll do it. We've got some boards that say, you know what, we're not real keen about all this public input. That's fine. We don't have to do that. We've got a protocol we've developed, but we want it to be your search. So let me go back to your question. Very typical that we would have some semifinalists. And typically, they might be 6 to 8. They are held with confidentiality, usually either done by Skype, like we're doing now, or coming in on a 1-hour interview with the board. And from there, the board then selects their finalists, and that's when their names become public, and that's when we do involve the other groups with the finalists.
Thank you.
Ms. Parker.
Can I just have a little clarification on that piece that's meeting with the board to determine the superintendent's performance objectives? Is that with the superintendent, the new superintendent? Are we all sitting down together to talk about that, or is that part of the pre-hiring?
It is with the new superintendent, and what we do is the new superintendent, the board of trustees, back to this research-based consensus decision-making model, and we're going to take you through a process to say, list everything that you can think of that you want your new superintendent to focus on this first year. So we put everything on the table. What that does, it gives your new superintendent an idea how you're thinking, what's important to you. But then we're going to narrow that down so that you will be selecting 2 or 3 for year 1. And hopefully this will build upon some board retreats in the future, and you're going to take a look at the things that you said that were not the most important for the first year, but are still important, and come back and visit that. Based on that, and we're going to ask you, so what evidence will you accept? But what the superintendent's going to do is put together an action plan and bring it back to you for you to adopt. And we recommend that be publicized and given to your constituents so they know, what your expectations are and what you're asking your superintendent to do. Now, they're still going to have the day-to-day operation of your multi-million-dollar organization, but this is where your focus is going to be. Here's where we want you to be spending a lot of time in this next 12 months. And then we're going to come back together, and usually boards just do this on their own, come back together a year from now, have a retreat, evaluate what you've done this year, decide, do we need to refocus on these performance objectives, or should we be looking at some new ones?
Ms. Adelson.
I have a question about the transparency of the interview when you're interviewing the superintendents or possible superintendents. As far as you mentioned that you have not seen that as a deterrent, if, say, a candidate wants to be kept as, confidential, will we just not see them because we've opened it up, or how generally have you handled that?
You're kind of breaking up,
okay.
And I'm not hearing you real clearly.
Okay, I'll repeat it. You mentioned that through the process that there would be transparency with the interviews of the candidates. And I wanted to know if, say, an applicant wanted to be kept in confidence and not made public, Is that something that could happen, or you would set it up that only those who are willing to be public?
Here's our recommendation, and we've had boards say, you know what, we don't want the names public. We don't want to make it public, so we'll make our decision. If that's what you want, that's what we'll do. But here's what our recommendation is. As we work with the candidates, their names are confidential. We don't let anybody know the names of the candidates except you as the board of trustees. But what we do recommend is if you are a finalist for this position, we think that should be public. That once you're a finalist, once the board is saying these are our finalists, this should be public information. And I'm a former superintendent. I really think there's a time that you need to step up and say, yes, I am a finalist here in Santa Barbara, and I'm proud to be a finalist to do that. And we think that's important. Now, the rest of the names that aren't out there, we obviously don't make those public. We keep those confidential. But if you say, you know what, we don't want those names out there, we want to keep them confidential, we'll do that. That just eliminates your stakeholders meeting them.
All right.
You know, that's the trade-off there, is that you're not going to get the input from the stakeholders. And we've done it both ways.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question as well. You put down that consultants will present summary profiles of qualified candidates to the board. Can you talk a little bit about what those profiles...
You two are breaking up right now, so I'm having trouble.
I was asking, you put down that you consultants present summary profiles of qualified candidates to the board. What do the summary profiles consist of?
The summary profile, first of all, what you will receive from us will be their letter of application, their resume, the things that they perform. We will, on the shortlist individuals that we present to you, when I talked about doing our vetting, and that we're calling the 3 removed from primary references and finding out we'll do blind people we may know in the district, you will receive a verbal and written summary from our consultants saying, here's what we found out about this person. Here are the strengths that have been identified that they will be bringing here. Here are some issues that you need to be aware of. What we do, they're your candidates. We present them to you. And let me just give you an example of a search we did a couple of years ago. We were doing a financial background check on the person and found out that they had filed for bankruptcy. And so we dug into it and found out, what was going on there. In fact, it was one I was working on. I called the candidate and I said, the board will definitely want to know about this. Well, they had this was 2008. They had some elderly parents. They bought a house to have their parents move in with them. Their parents became infirm and had to put them into a nursing home. The market went out in 2008, if you remember. They got underwater on the house, and they had to file bankruptcy. So I met with the board, and we presented all the candidates. I said, here's the situation. Here's what we found out as we did this in-depth background check. And that board said, you know what, that happened to a lot of people at this time. We're going to go ahead and interview this person. And they ended up hiring them. Now, our goal is we bring the information to you. You decide how important that is. You decide if that's somebody that you're interested in, if you want to move forward with them. We've had situations where we found out information where the candidate was meeting the criteria the board had, and we had some negative stuff in the executive session. We shared it with the board. The board said, no, that would not fly in our district. So again, what we do is we do the in-depth vetting. We find out everything about them. We bring them to you based on your criteria, based on what we heard from your constituents, saying, yes, they are meeting what you said you're looking for. Here's what they are. We'll share the positives and minus. We don't work for candidates. We work for you. We don't promote candidates. We just bring what we think are the best ones available to you, candidates to you.
Mr. Herron.
Just one question. At what point in the process do the candidates know that the people who apply know that their name might be made public?
Say that again. I heard the last part about making the names public and people that apply.
At what point do the candidates know that? Are they aware?
They know that from the very beginning, as they come in the process. And when we're talking to shortlist people, what we're saying to them is, if you are selected for an interview for a finalist, your name will be made public. And is that going to be an issue with you? I've been doing this for 25 years. I've never had anybody withdraw from ours because of the public.
But do they?
We had a very high-profile search, and we had 3 high-profile superintendents from across the nation in there. And in fact, one of them was out of Texas, and we had 3 networks following us around all day. It's part of being a superintendent. I mean, you're a public figure, and you need to be able to do that, to be able to stand up and be in the front. And I sincerely believe there's a time that when you are a finalist, that you say, you know what, I am, and I'm proud to be here. Now, let me go back and say, if you think that's a detriment and you don't want to do that, we certainly will adapt the search for you. I'm just giving you our recommendations.
No, my question is, we put an ad in a publication, and the person puts their name into the hopper. Do they know at that moment that it might be public?
Well, they know from us that, because we've been doing this 25 years, that we have a very transparent process, and that about 98% of our searches are open like that. But their names don't become public when they apply.
I understand that. I want to know if people don't even apply because they know it's going to be public.
No.
That's the person we've been told we might miss. We've been told we might miss the person we want because they won't even apply.
You know what? And I want to go back to our retention rate of our placements. You know, if we were not attracting quality candidates, we would not have an 85% retention rate for 5 years, 60 and 50 for 15 years. We've got good candidates that want to be there and want to be a part of your district and your community. And that's what we're looking for, someone that wants to be your superintendent and put their name on the line to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have no other questions for you. We just want to thank you for your time and thank you for participating in the process and give us an opportunity to ask you some questions.
Well, and again, I appreciate you at the last minute adapting to our needs to be able to do this. I have one last question. When will you be making a decision?
I think, well, we still have one more proposal to look at, and then I would imagine we're going to have a little bit of discussion after that, and we'll either make it at this meeting or we're going to wait till the next meeting, which would be a week from today.
Okay, well, you're at a great time and a great spot, but we would, it's not a time to panic, but there's a sense of urgency. And so if we're selected, we would like to meet with you as soon as possible to get the process going.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have a good evening.
Likewise. Thank you. So I want to, on behalf of the board, welcome both of you.
Thank you.
Being here. So you'll have about 20 minutes, and then the board will have an opportunity to ask you questions.
Okay.
And so anytime you're ready, be my guest.
Let me get these.
After we're done, you get to go home?
Well, no, we have a little bit more time. Yes.
I always hate to be the last one, and everybody's saying, let's get out of here.
Thank you.
Well, we're glad to be here, and I do have some copies for the audience if there is interest in what I just handed out. So here's another one. Well, thank you for inviting us. We're glad to be here to represent Dave Long and Associates, and we're anxious to share with you what we would have in mind for your superintendent search, to partner with you in trying to find someone to fill some mighty big shoes. So we'll begin. I'll just do a brief introduction about myself. Most of you know me. I've worked for the district for many years in several different capacities. I was a teacher, both special ed and regular ed. I was a principal of Santa Barbara Junior and Washington. I was an assistant principal at La Colina. I served as your assistant superintendent of elementary instruction for a brief period of time before moving on to become the Hope School District superintendent. And then I came back and filled in right before Dave came as the interim HR director. And then we got Margaret here to work with Dave. So that's kind of my background. I'm presently working with Westmont. I observe student teachers in your schools and in Carpinteria schools and Hope School District. And I'm working also with the county to help young administrators clear their credentials. So I'm doing that, and of course, working on superintendent searches for Dave Long and Associates. Presently, I'm completing a search in Stockton and also Santa Maria Bonita. Both of those searches will close in the middle of March, and so I don't anticipate that there would be any conflict or difficulty with those two searches. So that's my intro. I'm going to let Joe introduce himself, and then he'll begin, and I will then wrap up.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for letting us be here at 7:45. I appreciate that. I know there was a possible schedule change, so that was great. I appreciate that. My name is Joe Condon. I'm a retired superintendent. As my kids say, are you ever going to stop working? My daughter the other night called me and said, Dad, you should stop working and do this, that, and I said, thank you, sweetheart. I really appreciate your input. I retired after 20 years of being a superintendent. I was a superintendent in L.A. Unified, L.A. County, and also then I made the mistake of going to work in Ventura County for a year afterwards. I retired for a year and then went back to work as an interim superintendent in a Ventura school district. I also do professional development for superintendents. There's a educational leadership consortium that runs professional development for superintendents, and I handle that in Ventura counties and LA counties. And then I work for a law firm doing non-legal work. I'm not an attorney, but I do non-legal work. I go in and coach school boards who sometimes are at each other's throat. We coach superintendents. We work with superintendents and school boards to evaluate their superintendents. Sometimes boards are uncomfortable with that, so we facilitate that. And then, of course, I do searches as well. I'm not currently doing a search right now. The one I closed last summer was Norwalk La Mirada School District. It's a district of about 20,000, just under 20,000 kids, and ethnically and socioeconomically a pretty diverse community. You have an item in front of you. You had our proposal. We're not going to go through the proposal, so if there's questions, we'll be happy to entertain them, but I don't want to repeat the proposal, so we'll try and make it quickly. One of the things we look at each year is looking back 5 years, how many superintendents that we placed are still there. And in the last 5-year look back, 93% of the superintendents we've placed are still in their positions. Those that are not there have retired or moved on to other school districts. We've had no superintendents bought out during that period of time that we have placed. We will not, along those lines, we will not come back and recruit your superintendent. Sometimes that happens, and so even though he or she may be very successful, we're not going to come back and recruit them for another job, period. We will make that commitment to you. Now, I have to commit that if they call me and say, I'm interested in this school district, I'd entertain that conversation, but we will not come after them and recruit them. The search begins immediately. We would schedule a meeting right after we are selected. We would give you a 3-ring binder and walk through that search from the first day to the last day. We would assist you in the search, but it's your search, it's not ours. We facilitate your search. We don't conduct the search, if you will. So we would ask you who you would like us to meet with, what groups in the community. We assume open meetings for parents, interested staff members. We'd meet with principals, we'd meet with unions, and engage all of them in developing a profile. We'd have probably telephone conversations with each individual board member, and from that develop a profile of the person that we believe you say you're looking for. We'll bring that back to you, ask you to validate that, and with that we then recruit your candidates. And it also becomes the lens through which we vet candidates, so when we do reference checks. It's a board-centered search. As I said, the timeline will begin immediately, and we leave the control of that in your hands, but we would ask probably to contact the board president as our main contact person. So there's one person we'll work with. And those communications, by the way, would be copied to all board members. We don't want somebody coming into a meeting ill-informed or ill-prepared, okay? I'll turn it over to Jerry, and she has a few things to chat with you about, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Okay? Any questions of me before I sit down? And I said, I introduced Jerry, and then I immediately say, sit down. Okay, thank you.
Well, I want to reiterate, too, you can tell that Joe's a little taller than I am, that we do have some unique contacts across the state of California. Dave Long was State Superintendent of Education, and so because of his position, we have a great network of individuals across California. The flexibility of scope, this search is determined by you. If you decide that you just want to do an in-house search or a local search, we can do that for you. If you want to do it across the state of California, which I would request that you do, then of course that's what we would do. We can also do a national search for you. Again, you determine that flexibility. We do the flexibility for you, and you determine the scope. You will be defining, along with your community, the qualities and characteristics that you're looking for in a superintendent. We're not going to be bringing a candidate to you that we think is a crackerjack candidate and saying, this person is perfect for Santa Barbara. We're going to be talking with you, reaching out to your community, all of the stakeholders, all of the people that have interest in the education of their children, to work with them and find out what it is that they believe they need in their new superintendent. That forms the brochure and the characteristics within the brochure that we then use as the advertising agent for this position. We will visit with each of you privately. As I said, we'll meet with all of your interest groups. We will be at school sites to talk with individuals. We want to reach out especially to the bilingual community. We know that they're quite active in this community. And one of the things, since my Spanish is not going to be passable for that, and Joe's is actually even worse, what we like to do, and I did this in Carpinteria last year, was we utilized individuals within the community because we found that the Latino parents related better to individuals that they already knew and had relationships with. So we would be reaching out to individuals to help us reach to that community. So we would have Latino forums and talk with individuals about what they're looking for. We would use your e-news. There would be an ad in the newspaper about the community forum, EdHat, whatever we could utilize in order to get the word out. Also, I think principals could help us with that as well. We will be your ambassadors in this process. We'll be ambassadors to your community in this process. So we will bring back all of the information that we put together, and we will draft a brochure for you, and then you approve it. You decide, okay, yeah, we want this here, but no, we want you to put something perhaps more, a little bit more descriptive at the top. So you design it. We will do it for you. It will be at your request. We do an in-depth screening of applicants. We do extra work along the lines of making sure that we get the right information. We don't want to just take a look at individuals who bring us their references, 4 or 5 references in the letters. We want to look a little further. So we will be looking into individuals that are serious candidates for you. We will be looking at individuals who may not be on their reference list, and we clear that with our candidates prior to doing so. So we get a real look, a real hard look, honest look about each of the candidates so that we can bring you the most accurate information about each of them. The fee is all-inclusive. There are no hidden fees in the proposal. There are no surprises for you. And I see that I've skipped something. You will see every application that is completed and given to us. We will bring you 5 or 6 candidates, maybe 7, to take a look at that we believe are the most appropriate for your district and meet the criteria that you have designed. But you will see every application that's completed. So you'll get a great big box that we'll send to you through FedEx, and it'll be kept in Sandra's office, and you can come in at your leisure and take a look and see who has applied and go through and determine, well, wait a minute, I really like this person right here. And then if Joe and I bring those, an individual to you that maybe you don't think should be in that list of interviewees, you can tell us, no, we don't want to interview that individual. We want to take somebody else. Now, we will tell you why we think this person is better than this one here, but you are in charge of the search. You will make that determination. You will interview the candidates that you believe are most appropriate for this job. The search is confidential. We take great pride in taking good care of our candidates and keeping their information confidential. We will ask you to also do the same for them, because as a superintendent or assistant superintendent, it's very nerve-wracking to be applying for a job and perhaps you haven't shared with the rest of your board. You may have talked with your board president, but the rest of the board may not know that you are out looking. So we want to take care of our candidates. Yes, come right on in. You may.
This is being recorded, is it not?
Yes.
Okay.
And you're on
Thank
TV,
you.
so look good.
I didn't put makeup on or anything, so thank you. I think it's important, too, that you know we hire a private firm to do a background check on your final candidate. So we do a financial check, we do a graduate record check, we do a criminal check, we do a DMV check. And if there are flaws, we will inform you. If they're not, we'll inform you of that as well, and then that is shredded. The other thing we do is we go to the CTC website to look to see if there's any issues with their credential historically. You know, some people's credentials were suspended and then restored. We want you to know that. So we do what we can to dig as deep as we can with each of those final candidates. The other thing that we will do is we'll ask each board member to sign a confidentiality form, because we don't want candidates contacting you. And sometimes that happens. And that form really does protect the board members. So you can say, you know, I've signed a form, a confidentiality statement, and I'm really unable to talk to candidates. Sometimes you know candidates in the community. You may have inside candidates. And I suppose lastly, sometimes boards will say, we'd like to restrict the search to inside candidates. And I don't know if you have anybody in that position right now. If that's the case, we will modify our fee. But what we will not modify is the depth of background checks and reference checks on that person. That's our professional commitment. So just an information. Okay?
And finally, I think we just want to make sure that you know that communication will be, we will be in constant communication with you. You'll have our emails and phone numbers. We'll get back to you immediately within 24 hours and usually sooner than that. And we will keep the rest of the board informed. If you have a question, we'll make sure that the rest of the board gets that question and gets our response. And I'd like to say that I think that Joe and I bring a unique team forward here from Dave Long for your district. I'm an insider, you know that. I know this district very well. I've lived here almost 30 years. I know a lot of people across town, and I know how things seem to work in this town. And I think that Joe can bring a new perspective as well. So it's, I think it's the best of both worlds, having an objective viewpoint and then having someone who actually knows the lay of the land. I think that we have a great team to offer to you, and I'm proud to present to you this evening. I think I'll close and let you ask questions so that we can get to your specific concerns, if that's okay with you.
Thank you.
I'll ask the first couple of questions. Convince me why the confidential approach is the best.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Convince me why the confidential approach is the best rather than having the names disclosed at a certain point in the process.
Yeah. Our experience has been that candidates either drop out or don't apply if it's public. Because early in the process, they're working somewhere else. And they're relatively successful, and people don't know they're out looking. The minute that happens, it hits the newspaper back at home, and it damages them at home. And so you can do that kind of search. Quite honestly, we don't conduct those searches because we found that they're less effective, and the candidate pool is diminished by doing that. Okay. We just don't think we can bring you the best pool.
Thank you. A technicality on page 6, you guarantee to our satisfaction that if the candidate you give us is not successful, you redo the search, provided board members remain the same. Well, I won't be here.
Did we put that in there?
Yeah, so I won't be here. So will you modify that sentence so that if I'm not here, you don't say, hey, this board's not the same?
Did you just see my partner hit me
Yeah.
for doing that? I apologize. Our commitment is this. If the board hires a superintendent and within that first year decides that that superintendent is not a match and buys out their contract, we will conduct the search again for expenses only.
And
The reason,
even if the board's not the same?
no, only if the board is the same, because once the dynamic of the board changes, that's not the board
But I'm
that
telling you,
hired
the board won't be the same, because I won't be
Well,
here.
I can't respond to that, other than the fact, I guess you'll be leaving between now and the time that year would be up. Is that
I'll
correct?
be leaving the end of this year,
Okay.
because I want you to modify that statement.
Well, I'll consider it, but quite honestly, if we're the search firm, we're going to have to sit down and pencil that out.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we would look at that.
Because
But
whoever
what-
they get is going to be better than me, so.
Our concern is the board majority can change, and they suddenly want to go in a different direction.
I understand it.
We
but-
can't help that.
Yeah.
Now, if you're leaving, then
We would have to talk to Dave Long about that. And we would do that if that was something that you're very interested in doing.
I'm very interested.
Then I'm sure that we can talk to Dave Long about that.
Well,
and
we-
I could bring something back to you.
we'd look at the existing board majority or something. I mean, I think there's ways
I
to
think there's a
modify
way to do that.
So, okay.
Ms. Parker?
Can I just follow up as a point of curiosity? Has that ever actually happened where a board has changed and come back to you and said, hey, we don't like this guy that they hired, that old board hired?
No.
Okay, good.
It has
I'm
not.
glad. I hope that never happens to
Yeah,
you.
we hope so too.
Now, it has happened in our business,
Yeah.
but it
not
has not
with us.
happened to us in doing searches.
Gotcha. Can I go ahead? I'll ask a couple follow-up questions. So for the interviews themselves, you are not present, but you work with us in developing questions?
No, we will be.
You will be in the
with you.
interviews?
We will be sitting back off to the side during the interviews.
Okay.
In case something comes up during that period of time where you feel, where there's a question. And also to, bring the candidates in, to escort the candidate out, make sure things are moving smoothly.
Okay, gotcha.
We will handle all communications with the candidates on behalf of the board up to the point where they select a candidate.
Okay.
And then we'll turn it over to the board president and legal counsel. Now, we'll still be there and we'll still assist, but that communication needs to shift. Okay? But we are present in all of the interviews, and we'll assist the board in developing the questions for the interviews.
And as I recall from your proposal, you do a follow-up workshop, right,
Yes, we do.
after?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
Yes.
and that is included in the price?
It certainly is.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Simon?
How do you work to get a diverse applicant pool?
Well, I think one of the things that we've done just recently is work directly with CALSA, which is a Latino organization of superintendents here in California. And I think within the Dave Long group, we have a couple who are also Latino, and they have connections through other associations. We can't, of course, guarantee a diverse pool, but we can do a lot to encourage that to happen. And one of the things that we've done in the search in Stockton, one of the things that my partner and I have done in Stockton is we sent out emails to the most, let's see, how would I say this to make this correct? The top 100 school district superintendents in the state of California, asking them if they might be interested or if they would know someone who was interested in, who could be interested in the position in Stockton. Now, that doesn't necessarily guarantee a diverse pool, but it's reaching out actively, recruiting. So we're not just putting an ad in a publication and waiting for folks to come to us. We're actively out there looking for individuals, and I think CALSA has been helpful to us in the Stockton search as well.
One of the things you did not ask, and I think it's important, we do not have a cadre of candidates that we move from search to search. We both of us have taught at graduate schools, but I don't recruit students. And I try not to get into that because it appears that you have a stable of candidates. So we take each search as an independent, individual search and look for candidates that way.
Ms. Heidelson.
I see where you, and you mentioned using professional screeners. So is this a company that screens, or you, or?
No, it's from the Dave Long Associates and Consultants. We pick a couple of people who would assist us to do the screening, so that we have another pair of eyes, another set of eyes on the applications other than Joe and I. So we would be looking at them to screen as well, but we will have somebody who's totally objective and doesn't have any information necessarily about Santa Barbara other than what we've told them and the brochure, to take a look at each of those applications in a very critical manner. So no, it's the consultants that work for Dr. Long.
And do they usually come, does that come before you see them or after you see them?
I'm not sure I understand the
Or
question.
does the screening happen before you see the applicants, or you've looked over the applicants and then you give it to the screeners to take a second look?
We actually do it together. We all go through all applicants.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the things early on we realized is there are times when Jerry may know somebody or I may know somebody. Well, I don't want to vet that candidate. I want an objective third party. That's why we bring in other consultants who are not doing the search. The only thing they do is reference checks. For instance, I've done that on other districts where I'm not doing the search, but I do the background checks.
I see.
And so it's, I think, a more objective and a deeper look at candidates. But initially, we all go through all the candidates to see who best matches. And quite honestly, we narrow that field down. We don't vet. If you have 30 applicants, we're not going to vet all 30 because some just don't match the character or the qualities that you say we want. There's no point in spending time on those candidates.
Right.
We narrow it to the candidates that best match your profile. That's the group we vet.
And then also, when you mentioned the Stockton example,
Yes.
what percentage would you say of the applicants come from, say, fishing for applicants versus posting an ad or knowing who they are and going and seeking them?
It's hard for me to put a percentage on that. I think that the Stockton, since it's still open, it has 2 more weeks to be advertised. It'll be interesting to see if we can figure out who is coming from that pool, who is coming from that email attempt, or who is just, people who are just looking and find something in EdCal. The thing that's interesting about looking for a new superintendent is, and I know Joe's done this too, many times we will, if after we've talked with you and we know what you're looking for, we may know somebody who's already seated as a superintendent or an assistant, and we will call them and say, hey, I want to make sure that you know that Santa Barbara's open, and this is what they're looking for, and it's you. And they'll say, no, I'm happy where I am. I'm not looking. Why are you calling me? I'm not even looking. Well, I just want you to think about it. Well, they think about it, and not always, but many times we'll get an application from someone because we believe that they are the right match, and you don't get that very often from a search consultant. So when we make a call like that, they realize that, this is interesting. I think I will check this out. Because remember, you're interviewing for a new superintendent. They would be interviewing for a new board. So you're being interviewed as well as you interviewing them. So we also do it that way.
Thank you.
And quite honestly, we represent the board. And to a large extent, the board recruits. Your reputation recruits. Difficult boards that don't get along, that are cantankerous, that have a bad relationship with the superintendent, are difficult boards to do searches for. Because just as we vet candidates on your behalf, candidates vet the school district. And so superintendents are not quite willing to jump from the frying pan to the fire unless they know the conditions that they're getting into. And so good boards recruit good pools.
That's right. Good point.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board? I had one question in terms of So when you present a slate of the last short list, what can we expect as a board in terms of materials, or how are you going to present them?
Yeah, I think what you will see is that prior to the interviews, we will have discussed questions with you. You will have selected your own questions. We may help you write them, or we may come up with some suggestions. You may write your own. We'll include those as well. So when you come into the interviews, we will likely have the interviews out of the district office and kind of out of the public eye. I know that was done in that way this time, and I think that's a wise thing to do. When you come in, you will have a list of who's coming in with a timeline. Each interview will take about an hour and 10 minutes. There will be a break in between each of those interviews, an opportunity to discuss briefly the candidate and what you just saw. The next candidate comes in, you go through the very same set of questions, and at the end of the day, you will have been ranking them, and we'll show you how to use a ranking tool that we use, so that at the end of the day, you really do have a top 2 or 3 candidates, and there's no question about it. May not be the top 2 candidates that your neighbor has sitting across the table from you, but that's how it goes through that day. At the end of that day, you decide as a board how many are you going to bring back for the following day. Those interviews are usually done on a Friday. The next set of interviews are done the following day on a Saturday. That's easier on our candidates. Many of them may be traveling, and so they don't want to miss work. So by using a Saturday morning, that's a way for them we get business done on that weekend.
Can I ask, I took your question differently than Jerry did, so I don't know if it was answered.
You can go ahead and answer it too as well.
Answer it your way, Joe.
Let me give a different take.
Yeah.
When we come back to meet with the board to review candidates, you'll see a form that we put together, and it's in 3 parts. The top tier of candidates are those candidates that we believe best match the profile and the experience that the board said they want. The next tier closely matches, but not as close as the top tier. That's when you can say, well, why didn't you include this person? And we'll tell you why. And you have the right to say, we'd like to see him. It's your search. The bottom tier will be the group that does not match your profile or your experience, and we'll tell you why. But ultimately, it is your search. You can say, we want to see this person. We'll tell you why we don't recommend that, but it's your search. But we'll give you 3 tiers: the closest match, next closest, and those that we don't believe match at all. Now, one or the other of us hopefully answered your question.
Actually, I appreciate both of them because it gave me good insight into both the whole process, and so I appreciate that. No other questions, board? I just want to thank you both for the opportunity to answer our questions and explain a little more about your process, and give us the opportunity to kind of get to know you a little bit too as well.
That's
So
fine.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Whatever decision you make will be the right one
It'll
for
be the
you, I'm
right
sure.
one.
So thank you.
Appreciate it.
And you can
Thank you.
step outside if it's too warm in here.
It's nice out there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you, Joe.
Okay. We are at item E, discussion, good evening. Discussion selection of a search firm for recruitment of new superintendent. Board, thoughts, comments, questions?
That awkward moment where we step out, because honestly, I appreciate everybody speaking tonight, and many of all 4 of the proposals were good. I have to give a shout out, especially to Mr. Jacobson, or it might have been Dr. Jacobson, I'm not sure. I might promote him, for going through that Skype interview, and technically that was pretty challenging. So, and I don't know if that ended up actually being vocally recorded at all, but we'll see. I have met some of them, certainly have heard their reputations, and had interactions with other firms. I think they're all great. We had a really good experience with Rudy Castrita and HYA. And I felt like that process worked well for the district. The contract is about the same amount, actually a little bit less than the other ones there. And so to me, it seems like it makes some sense to go with HYA and a process that has worked for our community in the past. But having said that, I feel like it's also really important not to vote tonight, because one of the mistakes I felt like we made last time was just not doing a double check, reference check on whatever firm the majority of us is interested in. And so I feel like we just need the board president to check references on whatever firms maybe that are our finalists.
Yes, we learned the hard way last time by not taking a little bit more time and having people double check, not just us, but community members. So I would say we should wait till next week to make the decision.
I'm okay with waiting until next week to make the decision. I did want to bring a couple things that I'm just actually curious to hear my fellow board members' opinions on. Because I think that it will inform how I think about what the final firm is, and one is confidentiality. It came up with all of them, and maybe tonight's not the time to talk about this, maybe we're not ready, but as far as this would help me think about the firms, I'd like to know where our board members are with confidentiality. We did have a confidential process last time, and I was comfortable with it. I understood it, having been on the interview side and seeing all the time and actually what it took. I could see why it was important for us to keep that confidential. And the other piece that came up, and I'm just curious how board members feel, is having a firm in the room when the interview happens. That was interesting. We did not have a firm or any member of the firm in any of the interviews last time. And so I'm just, those are two things that came up for me as being things that I was curious to hear what other board members had to say about that. Yeah.
I'll answer the confidentiality part of that question because I obviously was interested in it. Only one of them wants to make it wide open, and I'm intrigued by him. I mean, I like that gentleman, even though he was, like you say, but I think I'm probably convinced that it's not a good idea. But I could be. It's still intriguing, and that's. I was interested to hear the responses, but it seemed to be a uniform response. You won't even get them to apply. I was trying to at least find out, would they be inhibited at stage 1 to even apply? And I guess the answer I got back was, yeah, they would be. I mean, the one firm, McPherson, has a reputation, and so anybody who is thinking about applying knows their reputation and probably knows that it will be public at will be public at some time. So that would possibly stop even the application. But I don't want to do anything that would stop applications.
Ms. Heidelson.
Let's see, I also feel like waiting a week would be wise, and looking into the companies further and getting public input. On the confidentiality issue, was also intrigued, and I feel it's important that it stay confidential for as long as possible till we have finalists, just because I think it's an important aspect to this. If somebody's considering making a move, that should be, at a point when they're pretty close to the end and a strong candidate. I think the firm in the having the search firm in the rooms was interesting, and I think it tied in. Each one said that we're not a stable of candidates. I thought, but in sort of a defensive way. But yet, whether they're in the room to hear what the interview response is, it tied into that somewhat. So that intrigued me also. I don't know in my mind whether that's a make or break issue, because I'm sure if we said we didn't want you in the room, they wouldn't be in the room. So it seemed like every company or candidate was very open to what the board wanted and would adapt to that, if that was a concern.
Ms. Parker?
Well, just tying back to that, I mean, I know that they all said that they were flexible, but I think that the reality is there'd be a tremendous amount of pressure to go with their protocol because it's what they're comfortable with. And so, yes, HYA, it's the same process last time as this time when they are not in the room. And so I did find that a little off-putting in the sense that it felt like it's more for their company then than it is to help us. Although I think that they would refute that, but it felt a little funny to have them be in the room for the interviews themselves, and how much is that about them assessing and saying, oh, well, clearly they're not going to work out here, but maybe they'd be a perfect fit over there, or maybe I should coach them on their what they say the next time they interview. That would all be running through everybody's mind.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really like that. In terms of the confidentiality piece, I almost wonder, because I know McPherson Jacobson has more experience outside of California than in California, and so I almost wonder if it's a California culture thing that's a little bit different. So that's a curiosity to me. I felt like, like Mr. Herron, especially even seeing this process, I'm very reluctant to do anything that would cut off candidates' applications in the first place. That's a big concern to me. And so I just want to be sure that we get, lots of stakeholder information and input without, I think any one of us would feel the same way too, that when we are applying for jobs, we would want some confidentiality around that. And I want to be sure that we extend that to people that are applying for this position.
My thoughts are about the confidentiality is the same as everyone else. I want to see a good pool of candidates, and I want to make sure we don't get people not wanting to apply because we've chosen a process that people are not comfortable with. That would not be a good thing, because that would hurt us in the end. It's not a benefit, I think. And at the end of the day, if we get a good candidate, whereas the board has also said, all you have said, that we get enough input from the community that is reflected in sort of the profile of what we're looking for, then I think the community is going to be happy with that choice and selection at the end of the day. So that's my thought in terms of the confidentiality part. In terms of the firms being in the room when we're interviewing, I have the mindset that, it's like, it's probably a benefit to the company. I think to the firm that's doing it. I don't see it necessarily as impactful, because ultimately that person in front of us is going to have to answer the question regardless of whether they're here or not, So they're on their own. They're going to be right there, or wherever they're going to be, answering the question. So I don't think that's going to be a hindrance or a help in some ways. So that's my thought. I do have a question for you all in terms of the scope of our search, because I would love to hear from you all in terms of whether we want this to be a more California-centric search, or are we looking at more of a wider scope? I think I mentioned that at the last board meeting, so I haven't heard anyone really comment on that, but I'd be happy to hear from everyone.
I think we should stick with California. If there's somebody outside of California who would like the job, they'll apply. They'll know about it. But I think I want people who know California law, California process, California education code. I don't want this to be a training ground for somebody.
Just following up on that, it was interesting because I think that the last time we went through this process, there was actually a price differential for a national search versus a California search. And so that was really weighing in. And I feel like probably just the whole process has become so much more digitized that as long as they're advertising it on their website, I'm not going to say no to a fabulous candidate who, as one of them mentioned, was, used to be in California but is now in New York. They're going to find it on one of the ad sites or on the website, and they can apply. But in terms of it being one where we send out promotional material across the country and reach out to other states, then I don't think so. I mean, the reality is we're likely to pick a California candidate, and so that seems excessive to me.
And I would echo what's been said. I think, I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, to have someone who doesn't know what an LCAP is to start the process is, wow. So I think that that's important. But I also think if there's someone out there that has had some experience, again, they will apply, but I don't think the search needs to be a national search. I think there is something to be said for individuals who have the experience and can understand California education from the moment they get here.
Ms. Idelson?
I second all that for all of you. One thing that comes up in my mind listening to these firms' presentations is how important is it that they be local and know Santa Barbara County, like the last one we heard, and have contacts within the area versus somebody who can sort of reach more broadly across the state. And on one hand, I think it's important to know Santa Barbara because, that's what we're looking at. But then in another way, I feel being able to reach from, superintendents and communities that maybe we're not really aware of across the state is important, and having those connections. So, if they travel here to be our consultants, I question how, is that a good thing, or is it more important that they live and know locally?
My thoughts in terms of focusing on California, I feel the same way as the board does. I mean, I think that the focus should be California. If there is a way for people to find out about the search through through their websites or other publications, and they find out and they apply, great. But I think that focusing the resources on California and focusing on what is sort of a better pool of candidates who would understand California education issues, I think is really important for me. Any other thoughts? Ms. Vimon?
And I think to comment on Ms. Idelson's remarks, it's interesting. I mean, last time we didn't have someone who lived in the area, and I think it's both. There's benefits to knowing our community, to knowing what's unique about our district, how we function, how we work. And then I think that there's also benefits to seeing it with, as was said, fresh eyes, right? And I think two of the firms had the balance of an individual who has worked with our community, but then also someone who has less experience with our community. Yeah, and I think Mr. Herron on multiple occasions brought up that this also might be a different board makeup in a year from now. And so it might not be a bad thing to see it with all fresh eyes either, because we see it with our own eyes and that may change in a year. So I think it's an important consideration and remarks, and that I was left with thinking that too. Well, what does it look like, and what might it, how might it impact the search?
I think it was Mr. Limon who asked the question of Rudy, what effect, the fact that he did it 5 years ago, what effect does that have now? And was it Ms. Idelson or no?
I think it was Mr. Paz.
Mr. Paz? Okay. And my mind was thinking almost the same thing, Dr. Paz. We have a 31-page profile that the community and staff and members came up with. Is that a help or a hindrance to Rudy? I mean, and I think that was a great question you asked.
I think for me, it's one of those things that I think is a hard thing to kind of eliminate from the back of your mind, because you have an idea of what the district is like, even knowing us as individual board members. And that's, in many ways, the lens you're going to be looking at things, and you can't take it out completely. And does that help you, or does that hurt you in the process? My feeling sometimes is that by not being able to take it off completely, sometimes it skews your vision, so to speak, to a point. it is helpful to have another staff person who's looking at it from the fresh perspective, so that balances it out a little bit in that regard.
I thought Maria in that case was by far the best second-tier person
Yeah.
of all the teams.
Yeah.
I thought she brought more to the table that would help the lead person in most all the discussions.
Mhm. I would agree in that regard. I think and I think it's also kind of a thing I'm also considering as well as a board member, is that I'm looking at the individual people that would be working with us and looking at their experience as consultants and previous experience working as superintendents, whether they've worked in a smaller district, a larger district, maybe both. Could they understand the differences between, so if they only worked in a larger district, could they understand a smaller district? Could they understand a smaller district like Santa Barbara? Smaller, so to speak, right? Not completely small. And that's, I think, is a helpful thing as well, because it's a different process, or a sort of a different environment than working in LAUSD. She worked in LAUSD, but she also worked in a smaller district, which is great. So that is another piece of information that I have to kind of also consider in terms of the lens and how they bring their own experiences to the search. So we have a decision to make, which is, sounds like the board would like to put this off for another week and put it on next agenda, which I think we are able to do.
It is already on there.
Great. And so we will have an opportunity to look at the firms a little more, ask some questions. I know that some of them actually provided some references. I'm not sure if all of them do. And you might remind me, but I know some of them did.
I think if they didn't, we can ask.
Yeah.
I think most of them
But
did.
I think they did,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yes.
Did we
Mr.
get an
Herron.
explanation of why Leadership Associate switched the team on us?
Did
The
we hear
proposal
anything?
had one, Phil Guan and Kent Beckler.
So what happened tonight, you saw a little bit of that, is that there are in Santa Barbara, Ventura County tonight, between the hours of 5 and 8, were 3 school districts interviewing search firms. Leadership Associates was asked to present for all 3 districts. So they had to create and move people around, so.
But just for the presentation or for the actual proposal?
No, my understanding is Mike Escalante and David Verdugo will do the search.
Okay.
I believe Dr. Escalante's last search in this area was Orcutt, Deborah Blow.
Okay. So we can put this off for a week. I can take the opportunity to follow up with some of these references and check on them, see how other people feel about each of the firms, and report back. Okay? All right. If there's no other items that need discussion, I would ask for adjournment.